Why do you think they did not believe her?
I think that a lot of that was that it was Johnny Depp.
Not the facts of the case.
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Who is he? Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And who is he? Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And what he do? And it's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, board-certified criminal defense lawyer. We are doing a compilation of the Depp Heard trial. But before we get to that, this is brought to you by ContractsCounsel.com. ContractsCounsel.com is an effective way to either get some work done if you're a solo or if you're a practitioner who would like to work from home. Go to ContractsCounsel.com. We have a lot of clients, but we need lawyers. So sign up, and I know some of you guys are fans of this channel. Sign up. You can be working in the comfort of your own home, doing some damn good work for people who deserve it. And if you need a contract written or any kind of contract work, go to ContractsCounsel.com and they'll help you. So here's the deal. It's been a little bit since the Depp Heard thing, and there's a new Netflix series out, or a Netflix show out about the Depp Heard trial that we're actually kind of mentioned in there a little bit regarding that trial because we covered it. So here's, without further ado, this is a compilation of the best moments of the Depp Heard trial, and I think you'll enjoy these. But what I'm trying to get at here is when Amber Heard's in court and she's crying, and there aren't tears coming out, and she's talking about things that just are irrelevant details, but they're overly enunciated. She can lose credibility.
My dog stepped on a bee.
But he wasn't in movies.
What, right. But Willy Wonka doesn't matter to you? Zeus Speed.
What the fuck is that? What the fuck is that?
Do I answer that question?
It's bizarre. It's bizarre. That's what you call a nervous fucking tick, okay? And it's just bizarre.
Mr. Depp, do you recall Ms. Heard testifying that she punched you in the staircase incident because she thought of Kate Moss in the stairs?
Do I remember her saying that?
Yes.
Yes, I do. 3 times. Yes, I do.
Do you have any understanding as to what Ms. Heard was referring to?
Yes, I do.
So here's the problem that Amber Heard has. First of all, she's over-dramatized everything. And when she talks about something that she wasn't there for and has no idea about whether it's true or not, she's so reckless with the truth that, she doesn't know a truth from a lie, in my opinion. And so when you do that, you're not careful about what you say. And when you're not careful about what you say, the other side can pick up on that and then have something that absolutely is provably false.
As Kate Moss, Kate testified, it was many, many years ago. And exactly what happened is what she said happened.
So Johnny Depp would not have been able to talk about that incident at all had Amber Heard not mentioned it in her direct examination. If you remember, there was a time where Johnny Depp's lawyers were like, yes.
In my head, instantly think of Kate Moss and the stairs, and I swung at him. And
the reason they're like that is because they had Kate Moss in their pocket. They had Kate Moss. She's going to testify, and they knew exactly what she was going to say. How idiotic is it really? It was unnecessary. She didn't even have to bring that up.
Kate Moss.
For how long, Ms. Moss, were you and Mr. Depp a romantic couple?
1994 to 1998. We were leaving the room, and Johnny left the room before I did, and there had been a rainstorm, and as I left the room, I slid down the stairs, and I hurt my back.
See, this totally cuts into Amber Heard's story because she's basing it on some rumor innuendo.
And I screamed because I was because I didn't know what had happened to me and I was in pain. And he came running back to help me and carried me to my room and got me medical attention.
Now you've got that vision, right? You've got the vision of Johnny Depp running back. I mean, so this isn't just, okay, Amber's a liar. This is, not only is Amber a liar, but Johnny's a good guy. That gives you a completely different impression. When I kind of break down the pleadings that are in this case with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, there's a complaint that was issued by Johnny Depp. He's suing Amber Heard, okay? She has to answer that complaint, and then she's counterclaimed. So she's got her own claims that she's making against Mr. Johnny Depp. I'm a criminal defense lawyer, and the burden of proof in a criminal case is beyond a reasonable doubt. It's the highest standard in any of our cases in our judicial system, okay? We do try civil cases, but the standard in a civil case is slightly more true than not. So 50.01%. Let's dive into what the claim is by Johnny Depp. Claim, when you issue a complaint to somebody else, you're suing them, you have to state what your claim is. Count 1 is for defamation for statements Ms. Heard's December 2018 op-ed in the online edition of the Washington Post. And here's basically the nuts and bolts of this. The sexual violence op-ed contained the following false and defamatory statements concerning Mr. Depp. Amber Heard, I spoke up against sexual violence and face our culture's wrath. That has to change. Then, 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of the culture's wrath for women who speak out. Another statement that's in the complaint is that I had the rare vantage point of seeing in real time how institutions protect men accused of abuse. The implication there is that the institutions are protecting Johnny Depp. I write this as a woman who had to change my phone number weekly because I was getting death threats. For months, I rarely left my apartment, and when I did, I was pursued by camera drones and photographers on foot, on motorcycles and in cars. Tabloid outlets that posted pictures of me spun them in a negative light. I felt as though I was on trial in the court of public opinion, and my life and livelihood depended upon a myriad of judgments far beyond my control. And so the claim is that these statements are concerning Mr. Depp, and he is Mr. Heard's former husband, and she publicly and falsely accused him of domestic abuse in May 16th. There's 2 other counts. Defamation for statements in Ms. Heard's December 2018 op-ed in the Washington Post, and it's basically the same statements that we're talking about. And count 3, defamation for statements made in an op-ed in which Ms. Heard republished when she retweeted the link. So what do you need for defamation? You need a false statement that is malicious. In other words, she has to know what she's saying is not true. It puts Johnny Depp in a position where he has to prove basically that he didn't do this. There's almost a presumption that he did this, in the article. He's got to prove that it's false. So that's what makes it complicated. You've got Johnny Depp putting forth all his 3 claims of defamation, basically. And those are fairly simple and straightforward. Let's just talk about what those claims are. 1, she wants a declaratory judgment per Virginia Code under 801. And basically, Ms. Heard requests that this court, pursuant to Virginia Code 801-184, declare that she is immune from civil liability for Depp's claims in this complaint and for the statements in her op-ed because Ms. Heard's op-ed is regarding matters of public concern that would be protected under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution by Ms. Heard that are false. So if the jury concludes that what she is saying is false, then it's just a matter of damages from there. So the first claim that Amber Heard is saying is she wants to make the court judge that she is immune and all of her statements were protected under the First Amendment, which they're not. So that claim will fail, 100%. Then defamation and defamation per se. She's claiming defamation against Johnny Depp. Depp falsely alleged that Ms. Heard committed the crime of perjuring herself in connection with the 2016 DVRO, domestic violence restraining order, preceding statement with no truth, judicial statements whatsoever. Depp further falsely alleged that Ms. Heard fabricated the bruising on her face and otherwise perjured herself in connection with the 2016. Ms. Heard was at a party the next day. Her eye wasn't closed. She had hair over her eye, but you could see the eye wasn't shut. 25 feet away from her, however, how the fuck am I going to hit her? Which, by the way, is the last thing I would have done. And the last one is this violation of the Virginia Computer Crimes Act. It prescribes harassment by computer and with the intent to coerce, intimidate, or harass, uses a computer to communicate obscene, vulgar, profane, lewd, lascivious, or indecent language, or make any suggestion or proposal of an obscene nature or threats. Anyway, that claim, I don't see her claims going anywhere, but that's why the testimony has gone all over the place. Both sides are claiming that they've been defamed. Her claim is $100 million. Not on her, I mean, she's worth maybe 8, I think, is what the last estimate I read was. And how has she been damaged to the extent of $100 million? And they're using the litigation, like this litigation itself is a violation of the Virginia Crimes Act, which it's not. Let's get into the cross-examination of Amber Heard. This is a delicate thing because if it's not done properly, it could really go south. Let's react to some of these cross-examinations.
Did you once this entire trial, has he?
Not that I've noticed, no.
You've looked at him, though, many times, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
You know exactly why Mr. Depp won't look back at you, don't you?
Now, first of all, I don't know why she is dressing this way. And I don't mean to be that critical of her appearance, but a jury, is going to have to take in what she is saying. And that includes her body language. That includes her dress. That includes her hair up or down. Everything's about communication. I would have coached her a little differently on wearing this dress, and I would have put her hair down. So one of the things that Amber Heard did is she got a restraining order, and then she sort of broke the restraining order herself by going to the hotel.
See what the jury and judge think. Tell the world, Johnny. Tell them Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp, man, I'm a victim too of domestic violence. And yes. It's a fair fight. And see how many people believe or side with you.
And you said to Mr. Depp, quote, you can please tell people that it was a fair and see what the jury and the judge think. Tell the world, Johnny. Tell them Johnny Depp, Johnny Depp, a man, a victim too of domestic violence, end quote. That's what you said, right?
I was saying it to the man who beat me up, yes.
Ms. Heard, you testified to an incident in March of 2013 where Mr. Depp hit you in the face multiple times. Do you recall that?
That's correct.
He talks about getting hit multiple times in the face. There are absolutely no open wounds on her whatsoever. If you are being pummeled with a guy that's got multiple rings on both hands, you would think it would break the skin. And that's the point I think that Camille's trying to make here.
Correct.
And you testified, quote, you don't know how many times he hit you in the face.
That's correct.
So Mr. Depp hit you in the face multiple times while he was wearing rings on this occasion, correct?
There were sorry, just so I understand better, there were several incidents in March. Which one are you asking me about?
The time that he hit you several times in the face wearing rings.
Well, he pretty
in
much
March
always...
of 2013.
Right. What are you asking me? I'm sorry.
When you have a witness that's trying not to answer the question, which is what's happening here, she really lacks starts to lose credibility because there's a reason she doesn't want to answer because she's making it up, or at least that's what the lawyer is trying to bring out. So, and one of the other things you'll notice is that when she does give an answer, she looks at the jury. That's likely what her lawyers told her to do because she's really not communicating with Camille. This isn't a conversation between she and the other side's lawyer. This is really her communicating to the jury.
He was wearing rings on that occasion?
I pretty much always knew him to wear rings.
Okay, let's please pull up Defendant's Exhibit 170A, which is already in evidence, Your Honor. You testified that this is a picture you took after that incident, right, Ms. Heard?
Yes, that was one where he grabbed me.
And hit you in the face so many times that you don't remember. Is Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And there's no injuries to your face in this picture, are there?
Not that this picture shows.
And there's no medical records reflecting that you sought treatment after this alleged incident either.
I did not seek medical treatment at this time.
You testified that you were also raped with a liquor bottle in Australia, right, Ms. Heard?
Yes.
You testified you bled from your vagina as a result of that sexual assault.
So these are questions that are just so in your face. They're so direct. And honestly, you know, this is just trial tactics 101. Coming from a man, it would sound so much differently than coming from a woman.
There aren't any medical records reflecting that you sought medical treatment for any of these injuries, are there?
I did not seek medical treatment after Australia, no.
Not for the rape?
No, I did not want to tell anyone.
Not for the cuts?
No.
Not for the injuries to your face?
I didn't need to.
Ms. Heard, let's take a look at Defendant's Exhibit 1090, which is already in evidence.
And if you notice, she doesn't give her time to explain. She gets out what she needs to get out and doesn't ask too many questions.
You took this photograph, right, Ms. Heard?
That's correct.
And you testified that this was taken in Tokyo in July of 2013, correct?
Yes.
So you decided to take a picture of Mr. Depp asleep on the floor?
He was passed out.
That's a
And
yes.
I took a picture of him because he wouldn't remember. He claimed he didn't pass out that way. And sometimes security would carry him like a baby into bed, get him changed, and he would be none the wiser. So I started taking pictures of it so that he knew that it was real, that it had gotten this bad.
Ms. Heard, does this refresh your recollection that you did in fact send this picture to your friend Rocky Pennington?
Yes, I did.
Sending these very compromising photos is not an act of love.
So you sent Miss Pennington this picture of Mr. Depp with ice cream spilled on him, right?
That is correct.
And you wrote, quote, "This is what I've been dealing with," end quote. Did I read that right?
You did read that right. That's correct.
And this is you protecting Mr. Depp.
That is me getting support from my best friend.
This is you supporting Mr. Depp.
This is me getting support from my best friend. I also need support.
You weren't afraid the monster would get upset that you took this picture?
This was Opiate Johnny.
It's also after a 17-hour workday.
So in this October 2018 interview, you said that you had, quote, donated, end quote, your entire divorce settlement to charity, right?
Now, we've all seen this one, right? And these are, she's just out and outright lying and playing semantics with it and doesn't want to go there. But she's on record, you know, on a TV show saying she's donated this money. You can pledge all you want, but until you paid, you haven't donated a jack.
That's correct.
And in fact, your exact words were, quote, $7 million in total was donated to, I split it between the ACLU and the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, end quote.
And think about this. I've read, I don't know if this is true or not, but I've read she's worth about $8 million. And 7 of that came from Johnny. So there's no way she's going to give away, 99% of her wealth.
As soon as I got a divorce and we reached the settlement, that's when I pledged it, right then.
And you say this because you, quote, wanted nothing, end quote.
That is correct.
But you hadn't donated your entire $7 million settlement to charity at that point, had you?
That's incorrect.
Sitting here today, Ms. Heard, you still haven't donated the $7 million divorce settlement to charity. Isn't that right?
Incorrect. I pledged the entirety of the settlement, $7 million to charity, and I intend to fulfill those obligations.
Ms. Heard, that's not my question. Please,
What was
try
your
to answer
question?
my question. Sitting here today, you have not donated the $7 million donated, not pledged, donated.
Now, this is an easy one for her to answer. She could say, no, I haven't paid it yet, but I pledged it and it's going to get paid. She could, that would just be easy to say that, but she can't because she somehow thinks she's giving something up. The person from the ACLU has said it's not been paid. So it is just a fighting over semantics, which is just ridiculous. And you lose credibility when you do this. And it's over something stupid like this.
$7 million divorce settlement to charity.
I use pledge and donation synonymous.
As of today, you have not paid $3.5 million of your own money to the ACLU. Yes or no?
I have not yet.
You had all of the $7 million for 13 months before Mr. Depp sued you, and you chose not to pay it to the charities you pledged it to. Is that correct, Ms.
I
Hurd?
disagree with your characterization of that.
Most of the money that was donated to...
So she's fighting with the lawyer over something that doesn't really matter. She could say, yeah, I pledged it. I haven't paid it yet. I'm going to. But the problem is she's on record saying she's already donated the full amount of her settlement, trying to make herself look better than she is.
To the ACLU and CHLA, and your name came from someone else. Isn't that right?
I don't know what you mean by most of.
Well, at least $500,000 that was donated to the ACLU in your name wasn't paid by you, right?
I believe Elon made a donation in my honor on one of the years.
Yeah, and it didn't come out of your $7 million divorce settlement, right?
No, nor did it count towards my pledge.
And at least $500,000 that was donated to the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles in your name wasn't paid by you either.
Right, those were made at the same time.
And it didn't come out of your $7 million divorce settlement.
Nor did it count to my 3.5 obligation.
Those $500,000 payments came from your new boyfriend, Elon Musk, right?
I don't know if he was a new boyfriend at the time.
So one of the things, aside from, you can't just go after her just to make her a liar. That just isn't productive. I mean, that is something you need to do. You need to discredit her if you can. But you also, if you can, you need to bring things out that are directly related to the claims that she's making. So she's made a counterclaim. So let's listen to what she has to say.
Exactly 6 years prior to this week, the week of May 21st through May 27th, 2016. What happened at the beginning of that week? And did Ms. Hurd know how long you'd be out of town?
I don't know if she knew exactly how long I'd be out of town, but it was a pretty extensive tour of Europe.
How did Ms. Hurd's actions on May 27th, 2016 affect you?
So that last question is an excellent question, but it's a very broad, open-ended question. Now they object to it to throw them off their game. They just, some people talk about strategic objecting. I never do that. I try not to object unless I have a really good faith I try not to object unless I have a good faith reason to do so.
Changed everything.
Objection, Your Honor.
Oh, it didn't change
This
everything?
lawsuit.
It doesn't really help his case to be clever like that. Didn't help everything.
That's right.
Sure, if you could wait till the objection, please.
Yes, I'm sorry. Tourette's.
What has it been like for you to listen to Ms. Hurd's testimony at this trial?
Objection, relevance, Your Honor.
Oh, overruled.
Insane. It's insane to hear heinous accusations of violence, sexual violence, that she's attributed to me, that she's accused me of. I don't think anyone enjoys having to split themselves open and tell the truth. But there are times when one just simply has to, because it's gotten out of control. Horrible. Ridiculous, humiliating, ludicrous, painful, savage, unimaginably brutal, cruel, and all false. All false. I wanted.
See, at that point, he should object, because now it's narrative.
No human being is perfect, certainly not. None of us. But I have never in my life committed sexual battery, physical abuse, all these outlandish, outrageous stories of me committing these things and living with it for 6 years and waiting to be able to bring the truth out. So this is not easy for any of us. I know that. But no matter what happens, I did get here, and I did tell the truth, and I have spoken up for what I've been carrying on my back reluctantly for 6 years.
So you take the character evidence that was brought in by Kate Moss and that speech right there, and then all the chipping away that they did on the various instances where they can prove that Amber Heard is not telling the truth. I don't see how he loses this case.
2016, Ms. Heard walked into a courthouse in Los Angeles, California, to get a no-notice ex-parte restraining order against Mr. Depp, and in doing so, ruined his life by falsely telling the world that she was a survivor of domestic abuse at the hands of Mr. Depp.
So she's going right after her, by falsely telling the world, by getting a no notice. What a no notice is, it's an ex parte. So in order to get the restraining order, all you have to do is allege that there's some kind of abuse. Judges will sign it as if it's a leaf coming blowing in the window.
What is at stake in this trial is a man's good name. Even more than that, what is at stake at this trial is a man's life.
Now, here's the thing. When you were advocating for your client, and I've actually teared up in closing arguments before. One U.S. attorney called me, cry me a river. But here's the thing. First of all, I guarantee you, Camille, and the whole team is very attached to Johnny Depp. They believe in their cause. They know what they're doing. And so it becomes emotional, and it becomes, a mission.
The abused. As you heard from Mr. Depp and multiple other witnesses that testified under oath at this trial, Mr. Depp experienced persistent verbal, physical, and emotional abuse by Ms. Heard during their relationship. You heard from Mr. Depp about how often Ms. Heard would berate him, insult him, and physically attack him.
So, and there's actual recordings and video to back up what she's saying and to back up Johnny Depp's claims.
Ms. Heard sobbing without tears, while spinning elaborate, exaggerated, fantastical accounts of abuse. And
My dog stepped on a bee.
No woman ever before Amber Heard ever claimed that Mr. Depp raised a hand to her in his 58 years. And
that's kind of an important fact, because you don't just all of a sudden start being a dick. You don't all of a sudden start just beating on somebody. I've seen this happen with guys who are wife beaters, and that's who they are. Nothing is ever their fault. They're cheap, and she's always to blame. It's just ridiculous. So let's take a look at the closing argument for, or just some of the highlights of the closing argument for Amber Heard's team.
You don't leave Mr. Depp. And if you do, he will start a campaign of global humiliation against you. A smear campaign that lasts to this very day. He will do everything he can to destroy your life, to destroy your career. That is what they're saying, ladies and gentlemen. And that's what they're trying to get you, the jury, to be an accomplice to. But it's not surprising, because Mr. Depp cannot and will not take responsibility for his own actions. It's always someone else's fault. Does the First Amendment...
That's interesting, because it's exactly what I've said about Amber Heard.
Give Ms. Heard the right to write the words that she wrote in this article on December 18th, 2018.
So the First Amendment's an interesting argument here, because the First Amendment really protects speech, but not all speech. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. It protects you against government action. It doesn't protect you against private action. So it's a little bit misplaced, I think.
That's the question. And you cannot simultaneously protect and uphold the First Amendment and find in favor of Johnny Depp on his claim. You simply cannot. You have to decide, should someone be able to write an article like that in the United States of America without being sued successfully, without having to go through the hell that Ms. Heard has gone through? Think about every piece of evidence that you've heard over the last 6 weeks.
So his First Amendment argument is interesting, because that's what he comes out with. He doesn't come out with the allegations are true. I mean, which is really the ultimate defense to this, and which is what I would have come out of the block. I don't know why you would come out right away with the First Amendment argument. It seems weaker than can't find for him, because it's true.
About his abuse, about their relationship. None of that is in the article. None of it. We all know that it would be a very different article if she had written about what she suffered, that she's told you about over the last 6 weeks. Because he knows the words are true, Mr. Depp says that the words now have a defamatory implication. He says the statements are the same as saying, Johnny Depp abused me. But just because he wants to make the article about himself doesn't mean it is.
She said it was about him. So he's contradicting the testimony of his own client.
He has to show you that any defamatory implication was designed and intended. Look at number 4. Designed and intended by Ms. Heard to convey the defamatory meaning that he suggests.
So one of the things you do in a closing argument is you can put up the elements, and that's what they've done here, is just put the elements of what needs to be proven.
Could ever make about their own life that implies anything, implies any involvement with any other person, could be defamatory. And
that's not true. I mean, you can't. These are highly, highly, highly visible people, and the words matter.
It's clearly not what the First Amendment intends. She didn't design and intend the words to be the equivalent of writing Johnny Depp abused me. And you don't have to take her words for it. You can take the words of Terrence Norty of the ACLU. He said that the op-ed wasn't even Ms. Heard's idea. The ACLU wrote the first draft, and great care was taken in drafting the article so as not to make it about Mr. Depp or Ms. Heard's relationship with him.
Again, he's contradicting his own client.
That's the only evidence presented about Ms. Heard's motive, except her statements that was exactly what she wanted to do. She wanted to talk about her experiences after Johnny Depp. The only reference to sexual assault in the article, and you can read the op-ed, is sexual assault that she said she had experienced by the time she was of college age, before Mr. Depp. So there is a reference to sexual violence in that article, but it's not by Mr. Depp. And Mr. Depp can't hold her liable for a headline she didn't write. It contains something that was not about him. And they want you to think that she republished the headline by tweeting out the link to the online version. So let's look at this. This is the tweet.
So this gets a little drawn out, but you sort of get the point. I mean,
You can't give him anything. They didn't tell you that, but the court told you that. And that's a very, very important thing here. He told his story. He had his opportunities. He had his full opportunities to do all of that. And he came in here and lied to you and said he's here to get him.
the difference between Mr. Rattenburn and Elaine, she's speaking with a lot more passion. And not super big fan of hers, but she sounds more like a prosecutor.
Reputation back. It's just one of many lies in this case, but it's a really big one, because here we are, 6 weeks of your time, precious time, 6 weeks of this court's time, for what? For nothing. Only to go after Amber. That's psychological abuse. He's going after Amber for nothing, because he wants to put her through this again, the third time. We're fighting back, and that's the counterclaim. She finally has said enough, enough. And we're asking you to finally hold this man responsible. He has never accepted responsibility.
See, that's actually, the way she's going about it is actually, that man, I think that's effective.
She's not going to go outside her house, without putting makeup on. And if she has bruises, why on earth, when she's been covering them up for 4 years, why on earth would she not put makeup on so that she would cover those up? Why on earth would she not want to cover up those bruises? It makes no sense. But you know what? You guys saw her here. You guys saw it.
So that is an interesting fact that she just brought up. And lo and behold, when TMZ's there at the courthouse, the only time they're displayed, she's not wearing makeup.
$7 million. What does she do with the $7 million? She gives it to charity, or she intends to give it to charity. Now, they make much ado about the pledge versus donation, but both the corporate designees for ACLU and for Children's Hospital said donation and pledge are interchangeable. These are pledges. The ACLU corporate designee said.
So next week, when it comes time for payroll, I'm just going to pledge to my employees their payroll. Because we just pledge it. It's the same thing as getting paid, right?
You typically do pledges because of the tax benefits, and that's what she said. She pledged it over a period of time because of the tax implications to it.
But she hasn't paid shit. I mean, I wouldn't even bring this up because she looks like it's just a losing argument.
To it, and because she was getting paid over the time. Now, she started to make these donations, and you'll see that the first one was on behalf of Mr. Depp's business manager, Mr. White, actually sent the letters with the $100,000 for each of those. That was the initial ones. He was trying to take credit for those, and in fact, both the ACLU and Children's Hospital got confused and gave the credit to Mr. Depp, not to Amber, for those. Then she made payments to both, and Elon Musk also made payments to...
She made shit. It's everybody else paying.
Both for $500,000 each, which she didn't count to her pledge, but they helped those organizations. At the end of the day, she's made $1 million in payments to them, but then she got sued here and hasn't been able to because she spent $6 million in attorney's fees. That is unrefuted. She still intends to.
She just said she spent $6 million in attorney's fees. $6 million. Here's the thing. The difference in caliber lawyers is just stark. It really is stark. The difference in approach to the case is stark. I think Johnny Depp will win this case, but I don't know for sure. You never know what a jury is going to focus on. You never know what they're going to hang their hat on. I just had a case where the jury could not decide after 3 days of deliberation, and it's a tough thing trying a case. It really is. But it's fun. It's so rewarding, and at the end of the day, when they got done, and I guarantee you, those lawyers know Johnny Depp better than anybody else, and it looks like they gelled as a team. It looks like he gelled with his lawyers. So now the jury's going to deliberate, and they've got a lot. They sat for 6 or 7 weeks in the trial, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. So we'll continue to follow it.
A Virginia jury's decision to side with Johnny Depp in his defamation lawsuit is drawing both condemnation and praise.
Not a lot of people, but some people talk about this notion that this has set the women's movement back. The light of day is not going to put any movement back. Facts are what rule the day. And if a woman is to be believed, which they should be believed, but it should withstand scrutiny, the facts got in the way of Amber Heard.
Yeah, a major setback for women, for women
Bullshit.
inside the courtroom and outside the courtroom.
Because?
Because basically what this said, Amber had an enormous amount of evidence, although a lot of it was suppressed in this case as opposed to the UK. But look at all the women who have no evidence.
So Amber Heard had a lot of evidence. She didn't have any photographs of any injuries. And there were several rebuttal witnesses who completely contradicted her. And in fact, she didn't have really hardly any witnesses that corroborated her to a degree that she was discredited on rebuttal.
All these women who suffer from domestic violence, domestic abuse, they don't have evidence. And basically what this jury said is unless you pull out your cell phone and you tape record your spouse beating you.
That isn't what they said. There were so many things that were absolutely provably false. And I think that's, remember what I said a while back? Falso in uno, falso in omnibus. If you're lying about one thing, you're lying about everything. That's the credibility of a witness.
You're out of luck.
But Elaine, I think it was bigger than that because you had the evidence, as you say, but they did not believe her. Why do you think they did not believe her?
I think that a lot of that was that it was Johnny Depp.
Not the facts of the case. No. It couldn't be that they shoved a bunch of rebuttal witnesses up her ass and completely contradicted her with facts. It has nothing to do with Johnny Depp.
I think the celebrity status.
But she's a celebrity too.
Right.
Here's the problem. You're on this losing side. To be honest with you, nothing can be gained by her making this appearance on TV, honestly. I think it was smart for the Depp team to decline and not be public about this. I'm sure Johnny Depp says, I don't want this. I don't want you to trash her. I don't want you to say anything about her. And now you've got Elaine kind of going ham on Johnny Depp.
But you have to remember, it's a tale of two trials. All the evidence came in the UK. Mr. Depp brought that one. The burden of proof was on the Sun in the UK because they had called him a wife beater and talked about the domestic violence.
See, in the UK, Amber Heard wasn't a defendant. So it just was, it's not really analogous at all.
In this case, the jury not only didn't believe Amber Heard, but in ruling that she acted with actual malice, that means she had the intent to cause harm, right? That's a pretty high standard to have proven.
And it's pretty amazing since the op-ed never even mentioned Mr. Depp. You have to remember that. What they learned from the UK case.
The op-ed never even mentioned Mr. Depp. But didn't Amber Heard, in her testimony, she said it was about him. And then the jury believed her when she said that.
Is to demonize Amber, which is what they did, and to try to suppress as much of the evidence that came in the UK and did not come in the United States. But the other problem is we had cameras in the courtroom. So here we had not only did...
It's everybody's fault but mine.
So I am a former NFL player. And after a hard loss, it's easy to wake up, point to the other side. I realized the better thing to do was to look in the mirror. What mistakes did I make as a player? Do you feel like you guys made any mistakes along the way? Do you feel like Amber made a mistake while she was on the stand? It's the celebrity, it's Johnny, it's the people who support him. But what about you and your team?
Now that is an excellent point. And the thing about it is, it's really hard for somebody who charges about $6 million to defend Amber Heard to say they made a mistake. And you sit there, she's not going to self-snitch. I mean, that's just not what she's going to do.
Well, and that's an excellent question. And to say, and you know, Amber even said on the stand, I am not perfect.
Okay, let's blame Amber.
I am a human being. These people were giving her death threats. So are any of us perfect? No. Is there something else we feel we should have done? Yes, I absolutely. I redo my closings 100 times afterwards, whether I win or lose. That's part of being a good lawyer, a good trial lawyer is.
Right. Bullshit. I don't redo my closing 100 times. If you literally redid your closing 100 times, guess what? You're indecisive and you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Pardon my French.
There's always something. But I think that there were a lot of influences here that were beyond our control. I have to believe that the jury, even though they're told not to go and look at anything, they have weak.
So now it's the jury's fault for looking at social media. So, I mean, so it's the judge, it's Amber's imperfect, she's pointing any fingers back at herself? No.
Weekends, they have families, they have
they were not sequestered. They were not sequestered.
And the 10-day period we had, how could they not have been influenced? Really ignored the cycle of violence and just said, oh, she wouldn't have done this if he had been hitting her. That was their approach.
So you thought that they weren't fighting fair?
Correct. I don't think they were fighting fair.
Objection.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
I'll sustain the objection.
A
bunch of scar tissue.
I'm going to object to the extent it calls for hearsay and improper expert opinion. Objection, Your Honor. Objection leading.
I'm trying.
Objection. I'm trying here, Judge. I'm trying. I mean, what the hell? Could Elaine face consequences for what seems to be defamation of the jury? Is there usually a gentleman's agreement to not accuse the jury of breaking their oath? That seems to have been disregarded, or in this case, is it part of the actual ethics code? Sorry for any mistake I made. English isn't my first language. Well, Control Oz, that's a very good question, because first of all, I think it's bullshit to do that anyway, because what did the jury sit for? Like fucking 6 weeks? 6 weeks, or more. And what are they getting paid? Maybe $15 a day? They're not getting paid much. And their lives are completely disrupted. So you getting on national TV and saying that they're engaged in social media when she's got absolutely zero evidence of that is so disrespectful to the jury. You didn't hear the Depp team do that, and obviously because they're the winning side, they're going to say we love the verdict. But notwithstanding that, it doesn't matter. I've lost cases, and when you lose a case, you shut the fuck up. And that's what she should have done. Maybe she wanted her 15 minutes of fame, but it did her no good. There's a rule about juries. You're not supposed to do anything to a jury that's going to either influence future jury service or call into question what they did directly. So one of the things I like to do after a trial is talk to jury members. Sometimes they will talk to you, sometimes they won't. Especially if it's a very sensitive case, they generally don't like to talk to defense lawyers. But it gives you and I a window into what they were thinking. And when you get a window into what they're thinking, you are able to look at yourself and say, what did I do wrong? What did I do right? And try to adjust for the next trial. Because you're always trying to get better. Always have to try to get better. But I would never badmouth a jury like this unless I absolutely knew for certain that there was jury misconduct and I could prove it. Then I would file a motion, but I wouldn't go to the Eyewitness News and say, oh, by the way, look at me, aren't I fantastic? Yeah, oh, by the way, that juror is a piece of shit. You just can't do that. I mean, and I think there's no ethical thing I think that she violated by doing that, but yeah, so that's that. So that was, aren't some of those moments absolutely hilarious? So that was, our little kind of recap of what happened during the Depp Heard trial, and it was just an amazing display of lawyering from Johnny Depp's lawyers, I thought. So we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Make sure you subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, and sign up for Patreon. And make sure you look at our Instagram, because we post a lot of updates on my trip and other things. So we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.
I'm part of
Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away.
23-hour lockdown, police is at my guard.